everyone, and welcome to this session. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you can hear me okay. My name's Juliet Finnie. I'm from Oviva. You've hopefully seen our stands downstairs. And I work with Oviva as a clinical expert dietitian. I've been with Oviva for just over 8 years now, working in our specialist weight management service, and also recently working in our AI companion role as well. And what I'd like to speak to you today about is specialist weight management care in the context of women's health. So we'll have a look at how we support patients within our specialist weight management service, women in particular, and some of the women-specific concerns and support that we provide, and some of our clinical outcomes associated with that as well. So to start with, though, just a little bit about Oviva. So Oviva is the leading provider of weight management services to the NHS in the UK. And we've now treated more than 1 million patients in total across England, Switzerland and Germany. And even within the NHS, we've treated more than 300,000 patients. We have our Tier 3 specialist weight management service, and that's what I will primarily speak about today. But we also have a number of other services, including diabetes services, and that includes type 2 diabetes remission as well. We have a stand here at E41 just downstairs, and you're welcome to come and speak to us about any of our Oviva programs today after the session. We'd love to meet you. So, thank you. How do we create long-term behavior change? So one of our aims at Oviva is not to provide a short-term fix in terms of weight management solutions, but to support our patients to find a long-term, meaningful route to behavior change that can impact their health and well-being in the long term. And we do this by combining our clinical workforce, and I'll introduce them to you a little bit more shortly, with our behavior change tools and technology, including our Oviva app. Our Oviva app allows patients to interact with the technology on a regular basis, so they have constant access to the app. And this includes features such as meal logging, where our patients can log a meal and have instant AI feedback on the quality of the meal and on practical tips and ideas on how they could, for example, improve the fiber or the protein content of that meal next time. They can also chat to our healthcare professionals via the app and access lots of learning resources. We've built our app on behavior change theory, and that's really crucial to us, and it allows our patients to interact with behavior change approaches such as goal setting within the app too, and they can log their goals within the app and come back and review those and adjust those on a regular basis as well. The other thing that's really key to us at Oviva is individualized patient care. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Every patient in our specialist weight management service will start the service with a one-to-one phone call with a specialist dietitian who will support them to explore their weight journey up until now, their aims, their goals, and their plan for meeting those goals. And that plan for meeting those goals will vary hugely between different people, and then that's how we want the service to be. So there isn't one approach that helps everybody to lose weight. People must have that individualized, personalized approach. So between the technology, the expert clinical team, and the individualization, that's how we aim to provide holistic and wraparound care for our patients. This slide just gives you an indication of our patient population who join our specialist weight management service. So our average age of our population is 48 when they join us, with an average starting BMI of 47. So these are people who are living with potentially complex obesity and who have usually had a journey before they've reached us. And that journey can include a number of challenges. They might have had really difficult experiences in the past with managing their health, comorbidities, attempts to lose weight in the past, and psychological and physical comorbidities as well. We also overrepresent the lowest deciles in the IMDD. So these are the patients living with the highest levels of deprivation, make up the highest percentage of our patient cohort. And this is something that we're really proud of, because opening up access and equality of access to our service is a really key mission for us, and we want to make specialist weight management services as accessible as possible to the people who really need them. And what we see in our patients coming into us is that overrepresentation in the higher levels of deprivation. And also means that we can provide that additional support for people who are living with a number of challenges, be that the physical, the mental health, but also the socioeconomic challenges that people experience. Aligned to that, around about 13% of patients who join our pathway are unemployed, and we're working to try and support people to improve their health to be able to potentially re-enter the workforce. And I'll show you some data around reduction in sick days and absence later in this session as well. When we ask patients in a survey, are they experiencing anxiety and depression, almost half, so 48% of our patients report experiencing anxiety and depression at the point when they're joining our service. And we know that living with anxiety and depression and other mental health concerns can make it very difficult to engage with long-term meaningful behavior change. So it's absolutely essential that we support people in the right way with holistic wraparound care that takes into account these complexities and these challenges that they're living with. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the practicalities and the day-to-day of how we do that as well. 29% of patients, so nearly a third of our patients, report having a disability when they join us. And so I think hopefully this gives you an indication that people living with obesity are often a very complex population coming to us from complex backgrounds, and supporting with the right care is absolutely essential. So this is our clinical leadership team. We have our lead consultant, Dr. Wasim Majid, who's joined us in the audience today. We also have our medical director, Dr. Shane Mehta, and we have our clinical leads across our different clinical professions as well. And then working under the guidance of our clinical leadership team, we have more than 300 clinical professionals within our Tier 3 specialist weight management service as well. And this includes a full MDT representation. So this includes nutrition, dietetics, and health coaches. It includes psychology practitioners. So we've got a range of different psychology practitioners working to support our patients with some of the complexities that I mentioned earlier. And that includes clinical psychologists, PWPs, health psychologists working within our pathway. We have a prescribing team with medical background, nursing background, and pharmacy background too, and the medical team within our pathway. So the full MDT is represented and provides that wraparound care for all of our patients, and that's often what's needed, because as we mentioned, every patient has different complexities and different areas that we would need to focus on. What I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, though, is the holistic care and some of the care that our nutrition team provides. So our nutrition team consists of qualified nutritionists, health coaches, and dietitians, specialist dietitians. But they don't just provide nutrition advice, they actually provide the whole host of holistic support. And we think about the care particularly for women and some of the concerns for women's health that people experience. This wraparound care is incredibly important. So we do provide evidence-based nutrition advice, and that is essential, but we also provide other advice such as behavior change support. So all of our nutrition team are experts on facilitating behavior change too, because it's not enough to know what to eat. We know that knowing what to eat isn't enough to facilitate meaningful behavior change. We need to support people with really effective behavior change conversations and planning for the long term as well. So not just looking at short-term weight loss, but actually what are your challenges that you anticipate in the future, and how can we plan for those, and how can we make if and then strategies and approaches that can help to manage that. I mentioned our psychology team, and our nutrition team closely align with our psychology team. We provide direct psychology care for our patients from our psychology professionals, But our psychology team actually really closely work with our nutrition team to make sure that everybody's on the same page with how we're supporting each patient individually, and that we're managing, for example, signposting to other resources and all the psychological needs of our patients as well. So in order to support women on our pathway really well, it's really important that we're all aligned and we're not pulling in different directions within the clinical team too. So that close alignment between both the nutrition team and the psychology team are essential. Our nutrition team are also experts in providing physical activity, support, guidance, and goal setting. And I'll go into more detail on the physical activity shortly. But other aspects of lifestyle are really important too. So we know that patients and women joining our service are managing other aspects of challenging life other than perhaps their physical health. There can be stress. They may have sleep problems, and all of these holistic wraparound care elements are essential. And that can be done through direct coaching, through speaking with the patients, and the online learning content that we provide within our app as well. So we must provide not just dietary support, not just nutrition support. We need to look at the women's whole health within the pathway and how best we can focus on what's important to them. So for one person, it may be stress management is absolutely their focus. For another person, it may be more the nutritional elements, and that's where the personalization comes in. I wanted to also just share with you some of the frequently asked questions that our patients and these have been chosen as those who women in particular ask during our service, and how we often answer these questions when they ask. So one of the questions is, how many calories should I eat? And most women who've been through a weight management journey, who've been living with obesity for a long time, have tried every diet under the sun. They're probably very calorie aware already. They've probably tried calorie counting. They're probably aware of different figures, and they've tried aiming for different calorie figures. And they often want to ask that question, okay, so now I'm with Oviva, how many calories do you want me to eat to try and lose weight? But what we need to do is shift away from that approach. So calorie counting approaches and other restrictive approaches are all about eating less, about counting systems, and about cutting down. And what we find, particularly in the case where we prescribe weight management medications such as GLP-1 treatments and Wegovy, which is what we prescribe at Oviva, is that this allows us to move away from restrictive approaches, because the appetite suppressing impact of the medication is often enough to do the cutting down for the patient, to help them to support to cut down without the counting systems, without the real difficulty, without the constant hunger. And then start focusing on the nutrition, focus on what's good in what they're eating. Start understanding about the benefits of protein, the benefits of fiber, the benefits of iron being particularly important, and calcium for women's health as well. And it's only by moving away and freeing up from these restrictive approaches that we can actually have the headspace to focus on the quality of food that we're eating. And this has been something that we've been increasingly able to do with the advent of GLP-1 treatments. And it makes it much more manageable for the patients to move away from that restrictive approach. But if you've been following restrictive approaches and counting your calories for 20 years, 30 years, you can't do that overnight. And that long-term support is absolutely essential to gradually shift that relationship with food, so that we're not seeing food as the enemy, we're not seeing it as something that we have to battle every day to eat less of, to count calories, but actually see it as a valuable source of enjoyment, but also nutrition and all of the good things that promote overall health. So we're right there with our patients to support them through that journey of shifting their relationship with food. And it does take time. And we support our patients on our medication pathway. We support them for 2 years for that reason, that we can't shift these relationships overnight. It does take time to do that. So the answer to when our patients ask how many calories should I eat is actually quite complex. And we want to gradually move them away from counting calories. People often ask us, should I take a vitamin supplement? Should I take a protein supplement? And again, this is something we see most often in women who join our service. And what we find with our GLP-1 treatments, patients who are on weight loss medications, is that often portion sizes do become very small in a lot of cases. And when you're eating much smaller portions, your opportunities to access all of the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that you need become much smaller as well. So there is a risk of not being able to achieve all of the nutrition that you need through diet because your opportunities to take those in are much, much smaller. So we do, for most people, advise a standard A to Z multivitamin, and this is where people often have questions around, should I take a menopause-specific vitamin? Should I take a women's-only specific vitamin supplement? And we can guide people to the right option, but often the right option is just the basic standard A to Z multivitamin. We need to check against what people are already taking as well, because many people are often taking multiple different vitamins and minerals, and that's as a nutrition quality role, we can make sure that people aren't taking too much of any of these as well. What about protein supplements? So we do focus on protein. We encourage people to take good sources of protein in their food-based diet. And we encourage people, as their portion sizes get smaller, to focus on protein and to make sure that each meal includes a protein source. And ideally, if you're having a snack, that your snacks include a protein source as well. So people often ask, well, would it just be easier to take a protein supplement? I'm not feeling that hungry. Should I just take a protein bar or a protein shake? There can be a place for those. And we find that often with people who are struggling to establish a regular meal pattern, that taking a meal replacement shake, for example, in the morning, if they've really struggled to include a breakfast, can be really effective. But generally, the general approach that we encourage people to take is to try and get their nutrition from food where possible, and to get their protein from food where possible as well. Because this brings all the other benefits, additional benefits of those nutrients too. So for example, if you start increasing the chickpeas, beans, lentils, pulses in your diet, you're not only getting extra protein, but you're getting extra iron, you're getting the fiber from those too, and all those other benefits, as well as establishing that long-term healthy eating pattern too. And people will ask, women will ask, how do I change my relationship with food? And that comes back to that cycling of diet and restrictions that has been going on for potentially decades by the time that they reach us. And we will support, as I mentioned, gradually over the course of time with adjusting that relationship with food. It will never happen overnight, and we understand that. And it's not a linear journey either. People will manage for a while, and then there might be a relapse, and we can support them with those and be there with them through those challenging times. But it is really important to use GLP-1 treatment as a window of opportunity to readdress that relationship with food. And I've got some insights from our psychology team to talk to you a little bit more about that shortly as well. Finally, often people will ask, well, what happens if I stop the medication? So if this is a woman who we're prescribing GLP-1 treatments for, they'll often wonder, well, this has been really effective for me now, but what happens when I stop? So you're allowed to prescribe this for me for 2 years, according to the NICE TA for Wegovy prescribing. What happens after 2 years? And we want to start planning that right from the outset. So we don't want this to be a surprise for anybody when they come to the end of 2 years that suddenly the medication is going to stop. So again, we need to not use the medication as a short-term fix, but as an opportunity to address long-term behavior change. And that happens by planning that from the very beginning. So even when you're starting the medication, we're thinking about, well, what happens when you stop? What are your strategies going to be? Can we build your toolkit to manage those strategies over time? And then we've looked recently at nutritional preferences. So this is patients on our Tier 3 specialist weight management service. And we asked them at the beginning when they first joined the service, and then asked them these questions again 9 months later about their food preferences and their frequency of eating these foods. So when we asked people about how often did they consume sweets, sugary snacks, or sugar-sweetened drinks twice daily or more, when they first began the pathway, about 28% of patients were consuming these foods at least twice daily. After 9 months, only 3% of patients reported that they were eating these foods or drinking these sugar-sweetened beverages at least twice daily. And that's a huge shift in preference. And what we see with the GLP-1 treatments in particular is not only a suppression of appetite, but a suppression in this food noise, so intrusive thoughts about foods, and we know that intrusive thoughts about food leads to these particular foods being consumed. We see a reduction in that food noise, a reduction in cravings and drive towards eating these foods. And we also see an increased interest in the more healthy, balanced foods as well. So it appears to dampen down that drive to eat these less healthy, ultra-processed, hyper-palatable foods. It's easier to say no and to be disinterested in them. So we also wanted to explore, well, what's conversely, or do we see an increase in the more balanced foods as an alternative? And this is female patients in particular. And we see an increase in those consuming vegetables twice a day or more from 16% up to 24%. So overall, when you add up the number of vegetables consumed over a large number of people on the pathway, that's a significant increase. And those consuming fruit twice a day or more increased from 29% up to 37%. And keeping in mind that these are people with suppressed appetites in most cases, so most of these people are on their medication pathway, to increase the portions of those foods is really quite significant. So we're replacing the ultra-processed, hyper-palatable, empty calories with these nutritionally benefits alternatives. But as I mentioned, we need to keep that going long term, and we can think about this as a window of time to implement these healthier approaches and build up the confidence in being able to do that long term as well. So if we just shift our focus to physical activity and movement, it's very similar actually to the relationship with food that we described earlier. So we know that many people have experienced a history of many years of a challenging relationship with food, very restrictive approaches. It's very similar with physical activity. Most women who join our service have had challenges implementing physical activity in their lives. And they've often seen it as something I have to do. I have to exercise to lose weight. So they said if I go to the gym and I do this exercise, it'll burn this many calories for me. So I need to do this amount of walking to burn this number of calories. There's no positive relationship with physical activity there. It's this must do, this almost punishment for eating type of mindset. This is what we need to shift as well. So we can shift the relationship with physical activity in a very similar way to how we shift the relationship with food. And we want to see physical activity not as a means to lose weight, not as a means to burn calories, but actually as a means to improve health and well-being. And when we can see those benefits and actually physically experience those benefits, that's when we find that women will want to do more physical activity. So how do we get people there? We have to firstly acknowledge the challenges. We have to acknowledge that there are physical challenges, that there are mental health-based challenges. So we mentioned earlier that nearly 50% of people are living with anxiety or depression when they join our pathway. That makes it really difficult to find the motivation to do physical activity a lot of the time. So we need to start small, and we need to build from where the patient currently is. And that's often in the form of some chair-based exercises to start with. Particularly for people with very limited mobility, we can start them with just a very small amount of chair-based exercises and build from there. We've got a library of videos which we can share with patients, which are very user-friendly. They're very easy to engage with. They're very slow to start and building up gradually over time, and make this really practical. We can set some goals, and we can do that within our Oviva app. We can set goals that our patients can adjust, and they can see their progress as they're progressing with it. But the other thing we can do is just focus on reducing sedentary time as well. So a lot of people spend a lot of time sitting, and even just moving around and getting up and spending some time not sitting is a huge step in the right direction. So that's often the first place that we'll start before building up a small amount of physical activity. Not with the aim of losing weight at all. So that we frame our physical activity as a way to boost your health and boost your well-being. We find that women in particular can be quite scared of strength training. And we know that strength training carries multiple benefits. So when someone's losing weight rapidly, as they often are on GLP-1 treatments, there is a risk of loss of lean tissue, We know that we can reduce that lean tissue loss through strength training, strength and resistance training, but we also know it's really important for bone health in women, particularly during the menopause. And we know there's links between physical activity, but particularly strength training, and mood and menopause symptom management as well. So we need to break down that fear of strength training. And we can do that by encouraging light strength activities in the comfort of someone's own home, where they don't feel self-conscious. We're not asking them to go to the gym. We're supporting them with videos that they can interact with at a time that suits them, light weights using items in the house or their body weight, or even just in their chair to begin with, and gradually build up from there. And again, this is why we want to work with people for 2 years, because it takes time to gradually build this up. And again, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. Okay. So what I wanted to talk to you now about is how we've flexed what we do, particularly from a psychological point of view, to manage the complexities of women's health, and particularly those who are on the GLP-1 medications. So we've mentioned that embedding sustainable behavior change is essential. We do not want to provide a short-term fix where somebody loses weight while they're with us and then regains it when they're finished. And there is no long-term benefit to anybody from that. We need to use GLP-1 treatment as a window of opportunity to allow this maintaining and embedding of sustainable long-term behavior change. And that's always going to be the focus. It's not just about bringing down the number on the scales, but how can we help you to use this time where you're feeling less hungry, you've got less intrusive food noise, to build your confidence and your toolkit and build your mental health in a way that helps you to build that sustainable long-term future as well. We can also use this window of opportunity to address some of the underlying psychological factors that can make it really difficult and have caused people to have this cycle of unsuccessful dieting and unsuccessful weight loss attempts in the past. And we know there's so many different factors to that, and environmental factors play a huge part as well. But often the underlying psychological factors really feed into that cycling of people struggling to maintain their health behaviors in the long term. And this is where our psychology team is absolutely key. So we can match our patients to the right level of psychology care to really work on an individual basis with that person on what are their psychology barriers, what are the challenges for them that we can support with, and gradually build over time to build those long-term healthy habits. And what we want to see is that reshaping of relationship with food, with physical activity, and also their body acceptance too. And all of this takes time to achieve. Just thinking about some of the specifics to women's health that we consider. So we know that menopause can have a huge impact on someone's health, but also their day-to-day well-being, the symptoms they experience, and we keep an open discussion with our patients about menopause throughout their journey, if applicable to them. So we want to know how that's impacting them. We don't want to make any assumptions on this is how menopause impacts people. Everybody's different. We want to know individually how their menopause is impacting them. And we can then adjust our approaches, both from a nutrition, physical activity, and psychology point of view, to individualize to them. With GLP-1 treatment, with oral HRT, that can impact absorption, and it's really important that anybody who's taking oral HRT is signposted to have a conversation with their GP around their HRT options when they're taking GLP-1 treatments. So that's part of our prescribing pathway. And similarly, we also advise on contraception and on oral contraceptives not being sufficient, and on alternative options. And we can signpost patients for further information and advice on that too. But those are absolutely key conversations at the start of any prescribing journey for our patients. We know that a lot of patients are living with polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. So 8% of our patients who join us on our pathway, so that's 8% of our total, not just 8% of the women who join us, are living with PCOS. I've got some specific outcome data to show you for our PCOS population shortly. But we also know that weight loss can be really effective actually in returning someone's menstrual cycles if they're living with PCOS. but that's something that we need to counsel on and discuss at the beginning of their journey too, because that could feed into the contraception discussions too, but also just generally how do they feel about the potential of their cycles returning. And finally, we can also discuss pregnancy planning for the future too, because many women joining our pathway are considering weight loss as a means to facilitating pregnancy in the future. So it's important that we understand their aims there, and that we also counsel that they should not attempt to conceive while on GLP-1 treatment. So all of these considerations are part of the beginning of someone's prescribing journey, but we can revisit throughout the 2-year pathway as well. I'll just skip ahead to this one just now. So if we think about what are the psychological impacts of GLP-1 treatment, we've gathered a lot of insights. So we've worked with thousands of patients now, and through this time and through the work of our psychology team, we've gathered a lot of insights, and they've shared some of the psychology-specific insights here. So as I mentioned, people experience a reduction in food noise, and that's intrusive thoughts about food. And you all may be experiencing those right now. So, if it's 11:15, you may well be craving a muffin or a pastry or a coffee. When you are taking GLP-1 treatments, those are often dampened down. So they may be present, but they're not as intrusive and intense. And people experiencing this food noise to different degrees. And it makes it easier to manage the food environment that we have to navigate our way through when you're taking the GLP-1 treatment. And then that frees up patients to embed those long-term healthy behavior change. I mentioned that we see shifts in appetite and food preference, and we saw that in the data earlier as well. But we see ripple effects too. So other areas such as alcohol consumption and smoking, the drive towards those behaviors is often dampened down again in GLP-1 treatment. So this means that it makes it easier again for smoking cessation, for example, if that's what someone's aiming for, and we can support them with that. We often see the risk of binge eating and emotional eating reduced. Now, everybody experiences emotional eating to some degree, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can become a real challenge when it's highly prevalent and highly intense for someone. And the drive towards emotional eating can be really reduced with GLP-1 treatments. But we also know that that has the potential to come back again when someone stops the treatment. So again, we need to use this as a window of opportunity to learn the techniques for managing emotional eating and experience life without a high intense level of emotional eating before we can then address that long-term planning as well. So that's really important. We don't just want to dampen this down, we want to use it as a window of opportunity to work with people. And what our psychology team and our nutrition team finds is that behavior change, it becomes more manageable, and it can actually become a really positive cycle. So often people are seeing weight loss, meaningful weight loss, for the first time in their lives. And they're experiencing the well-being, the good feeling associated with perhaps being a bit lighter, being able to move more easily, mood improving, and that can then feed into a really positive cycle of further improvements in their food choices, their lifestyle choices, being able to do more physical activity, and so on. So we can really capitalize on that positive cycle and support people to gain as much as they can from it during that time. We offer what we call off-ramping or down titration of GLP-1 treatment during the last 6 months of treatment. And this is really important because we know that, as I mentioned, we can prescribe for a maximum of 2 years. We know that at the end of that 2 years period, there is a risk of rapid regain of appetite, of regain of a lot of the challenging experiences, such as food noise, emotional eating, for example. And a lot of the strategies that people have put in place become a lot more difficult to manage when we stop the medication. So we offer an option to gradually down titrate the medication during the last 6 months rather than have an abrupt stop when somebody reaches the end. And this allows a more gradual return of appetite and the option for people to experience those challenges more gradually and to put their strategies in place and have really close behavioral support from our nutrition team, from our psychology team during that time. And we work really closely with appetite management strategies such as protein and fiber for satiety, We can bring in different structured dietary approaches, such as reduced carbohydrate diets at that time to manage challenges. And again, no one size fits all for dietary approaches. And we can look at physical activity again at that stage too, because physical activity can be incredibly helpful in terms of weight maintenance, as well as providing a welcome distraction from cravings and other challenges as they start to recur. So really close support during this off-ramping last 6 months period is absolutely essential. And that's why as well we're planning from this from the beginning. We're not just at the ends of the 2 years having this discussion. So let's just look at some of the outcomes that we see. So this is, again, female patients. So this is based on just under 3,000 female patients who joined our pathway, and we're comparing their answers to our survey at the very beginning of the pathway compared to 9 months later. So those patients who rated their health as very good increased from 1.4% up to just under 11%. Those who rated their quality of life as good increased from 17% up to 44%. So I think that's an amazing figure. You know, for those people to say quality of life is very good, that's a huge increase, and that's what it's all about. You know, it's not essentially about numbers on the scale. We see the reductions on the scales, but this is what it's for. It's for quality of life and those overall health improvements. An increase in people being able to carry out physical activity increased from 18% up to 30%. And those patients who rated their own mental health as good increased from 11% to 21%. So, and that's in the first 9 months, and we're working with people beyond that. So we want to improve that further since then. But that's, I think, they're really, really encouraging outcomes. We mentioned emotional eating. We mentioned that everybody experiences it, and it's a problem when it becomes intense and it becomes all-consuming. And that's when we ask people, do you experience emotional eating always or frequently? At the beginning of the pathway, 53% of people were experiencing that always or frequently. That reduced to 16% at 9 months. Those people who were saying always experiencing emotional eating, so a really quite intense experience for them, we saw a 79% reduction in the people answering always to that question. And in the same time, rare emotional eating, so those people who said they experience it rarely, increased from 11% up to just over 29%. So a real significant reduction in emotional eating. And that's absolutely key, but as I say, during that time when that's reducing, we want to think about what are your strategies for emotional eating later in the longer term as well, because we can build those strategies while this is dampened down. We've looked also at the impact from a health economics point of view, and on patients experiencing sick days from work. And we've seen that those people after 9 months on the Tier 3 program reduced the number of sick days that they were reporting by 45%. We also increased those taking no sick days from 63% to 76% and reduced the number of both in-person and online GP visits that people were experiencing too. So I think this aligns with the improvements in the physical health, but also potentially the mental health impact that we've seen on the pathway. Okay, so if you'd like to refer your patients to us, we would be very happy to support them with all of the things that I've just mentioned. You can see on the slide there some of the routes to referral and also our website too. There's loads of information on our website about how to refer patients to us, but we're also very happy to answer your questions on that as well. We're here at stand E41, which is really just down the stairs, and we'd love to talk to you more about that. I've got about 5 minutes left just now, so what I'd like to do is take any clinical questions that you have, but if you've got questions about how to refer or specific ICV-based questions, our expert team from our service engagement managers are all downstairs at the stand. So please come and visit us at the stand with those types of questions, and I'll take your clinical questions now, and I'll also be at the stand afterwards as well. I think this gentleman has a question.
Thank you. Could you please tell me how many deaths in UK were associated with GLP-1 prescription? That's number one. Number two, what is the mechanism of action in PCO by bringing the periods, regular periods?
Okay. So I don't know the answer to the first question. I'm afraid we would need to look up that data. And in terms of the PCOS patients, when often weight loss is one of the most challenging things for somebody living with a PCOS. So we know that weight loss in general is incredibly challenging. And then when you add in PCOS, weight loss becomes even more challenging in that context. And we know there's a high level of insulin resistance and there's a high level of abdominal obesity. When we can achieve that weight loss, it reduces that insulin resistance significantly. So we're not only seeing the weight loss on the scales, but what we're also seeing is the reducing of that abdominal obesity and the reducing of that visceral fat internally as well, which allows that increase in insulin sensitivity, and then it has the impact on the hormonal effects, which then can start to kick off those cycles to start working again. So I think what we're seeing is a way for people living with PCOS to finally start achieving really meaningful weight loss when they're often the group that struggle the most. And actually I had a slide which I don't think is showing up for some reason on PCOS weight loss figures. But what we've done very recently is we've demonstrated the differences in weight loss outcomes between PCOS patients and our standard population. And what we're seeing is that at 3 months, our weight loss is around about 3%. At 6 months, it's around 8%, and at 12 months, it's around 15% weight loss that people are achieving. And when you separate out the PCOS population, the weight loss is actually exactly the same. So we're seeing equitable weight loss for the first time with patients living with PCOS. And the medications are supportive with that, but the wraparound care is essential to achieve that as well. Thank you. I could probably take another question if there is any more. I think the gentleman at the back. There's someone at the back there.
Hi, was there any data on depression and anxiety with this? Because there was something on the FDA website that was taken back, and NICE sort of approved GLP-1s for weight loss after that, but there was some data on nature.com about this. So is there, and I saw your slide on psychology impact, and have you had any such experiences?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I mean, I think that the really wide impact on mental health, I think will take more time for us to see as time goes on and we prescribe these medications in the longer term to see the real impact on mental health. But the impact that we see in all of our data when we look at comorbidities that are assigned to a patient, and also in our patient surveys and when we ask them questions, is positive in terms of mental health. So we're seeing a reduction in patients experiencing symptoms of depression, anxiety. A lot of patients are experiencing other mental health problems as well. You know, severe mental illness alongside their obesity is very common. And in those cases, you know, we can support patients alongside those conditions too. And it's really important that we don't unnecessarily exclude anybody because of their mental health as well. Thank you. Oops. Okay, I think we've reached time today, but I will be at the stand for the next hour or so. So if you do have further questions, please come and join us. And if you'd like to talk about referring your patients, please come and join us at the stands. Thank you, everybody.